Hey everybody, welcome back to G for G on YouTube. I'm your host, Napalm Dawn, and today we're going to revisit the situation that I talked about in my last video where I said, Senpai noticed me, I got banned from Zoe Quinn's Twitter. Well, as a part 2 to that, Zoe Quinn's Twitter was taken down very quickly after I discovered that I had been blocked on it, and then would later come to discover that the guy that I was actually replying to on her Twitter, Captain Soyboy Latte, he'd gone ahead and blocked me too. So now, of course, as a lot of you know, her Twitter is currently inactive. However, there is a new post up on it that says, due to the deactivation status, it takes off two-factor, and there's been a lot of attempts to go ahead and get into it, so it is currently reactive so that two-factor can be on, but it's basically off for mental health. There are some questions as to whether or not she's the one who did a post, or maybe somebody did it for her, or who knows. But the plot is definitely thickening a little bit here since things first came to light about the Alec Holowka situation. So if you're not aware, basically Zoe Quinn jumped on a similar post from Natalie Lawhead, where Natalie Lawhead accused a indie dev of bad conduct. Zoe Quinn went ahead and did the same thing and said the same thing about Alec Holowka. Now, there's a couple things we'll get into that we really have to specify where things are being misrepresented in a lot of the discussions on this, and we'll get to that. But as you may probably know at this point, Alec, who is the guy here on the right, a couple days after the accusation went public, decided to leave the mortal coil, and his former devs have posted about him, his sister posted about him, and then Zoe Quinn's Twitter went dark. So what the sister said, and this is kind of key, is the sister said that he's been better lately, he was on medication, he was in therapy, and he was who he should be without the darkness in him. And then she said, I would believe that he had done harm, and that she always stands with survivors and everything. So to this guy, I mean, obviously that was after, but some things had occurred before he left, and it probably felt like his entire world was closing in on him. There have been people on Zoe's side who've said that is what he did is the sign of somebody who feels terrible guilt and shame over what he did, meaning it's true. And then a lot of other people have countered, like, no, whether it's true or not, he probably feels there is no way out of this. There is no coming back from it. The box has closed in around him and he can't get out. It is sad that he definitely felt that way, considering you have cases like Chris Hardwick, where things do come to light and prove your innocence, and you are returned to where you are. I mean, he's back again doing Talking Dead and whatnot, and I don't really think his career is going to suffer too much from it. You have cases like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, where accusations were flying against Johnny, and then a lot of people close to them were like, no, Amber's actually kind of a bitch and is doing some really bad things to Johnny. It's her. Not that I know where he is right now, but well over a year ago, Hodaras was accused by an ex-girlfriend, Crystal, of, not in the past, but at the time, present day, doing some things after potentially she did not have a good round of alcohol at a club or something like that. And he stepped down from managing the San Francisco Shock from the Overwatch League, or the OWL. Nothing's really ever come of that one either, and much like the Chris Hardwick one, I don't really believe the Hodaras one was on him. Crystal's cropped conversation seemed sketchy. A lot of people have said that Crystal ran Hodor's into the ground, would like take him kind of a lot in a Las Vegas lifestyle, would take him to the club so that he would pay for everything because he was extremely nice, and he would pay for everything and pay for the drinks and run around and get them, but then she would immediately like flirt with people the moment he was out of line of sight. I didn't trust that one. And for the Zoe situation, I'll be one of the first to say that in my original video, not because it's female, but because it's her, didn't necessarily put that much stock in her accusations against Alec. However, as more and more time has come on since the accusations let fly, it's clear that something definitely was up with this guy. And I'd be one of the first to say that I'm backtracking on a belief that nothing happened. I do believe something happened between these two that was not good. And we'll get into that when we look at her post that she made over here, because there's one or two things about it that I think people kind of mistake over here. So first off, the people that call Alec a rapist, this isn't true. The actual rapist was the first person that she talks about in this post, the person who put her in a vulnerable state that she started talking to Alec, and then the two connected when she was quote-unquote vulnerable. The real sexual assault was this first guy, this guy in Toronto who happened to be in the gaming industry. See, a few months into making games, I was sexually assaulted. My visa status was threatened. So this is the actual guy that you can legitimately pin the rapist tag to. People who call Alec a rapist are not doing the word justice, and it's extremely unfair because he may have been an abuser, he may have done bad acts, but at least in Zoe's own verbiage, she never accused him of that. She just said he was a bad actor. And I don't mean actor in Hollywood, I mean a bad character. Sometimes when you're talking about coding or games, something that is in the game is an actor because it affects things. So he was a bad character. So after the assault, she said she wanted to leave. Oh, by the way, note this. This story isn't about him. After years of therapy and working on himself, he reached out and apologized for everything, and I have forgiven him. We're going to come back to this because this is going to lead into Zoe actually being more of a monster in this than people thought. So a month after the assault, I wanted to get out of Toronto. I was scared. I couldn't sleep. I almost killed myself over it. I had the note ready, but I couldn't do it. So enter Alec. Yeah, the one from Night in the Woods. I felt like in my newly chosen field, this is somebody who's going to have my back. We talked about how great and cheap Winnipeg was. We flirted, and he knew I was in an incredibly vulnerable place. Had come to Winnipeg to see if she could be in a dev house with some friends, and they would see if it works out that between the two of them in person the way that had been working out online. The trip was supposed to be for 2 weeks. She'd get the plane ticket there. He'd send her back. That was all that she could afford over there. Well, I couldn't get home for a month, and it was only because my roommate used his miles to get me out of it. So when they say roommate, I think they mean the roommate back in Toronto over here. That you have to sort of dig to check on that, and that it's not a roommate when she was with Alec. So while I was in Winnipeg, he slowly isolated me from everyone in my life, while absolutely degrading me whenever we were alone. He convinced me to talk the three friends out of the shared place. He convinced me to let me program the game instead of the friend that I had planned. He screamed at me for over an hour because of the tone of my voice when I said hello. He wouldn't let me leave the apartment without him and refused to get the code in. So I'm going to hit pause for a second over here. This is something that I happened to think very deeply about the other day when I was planning this video, but then new stuff came to light, and I paused that and I said I got to digest the new stuff and do a video not yesterday, but today. The day that I'm recording this at least. When I was thinking about this, he wouldn't let me leave the apartment without him, refused to give me the code to get back in. This sounds extremely monstrous on his point and like, oh my god, this poor girl. But you need to remember something. Code to get in. That's like saying a key, okay? If you have somebody visiting you for 2 weeks, be it friend or friends with benefits, boyfriend, girlfriend, are you going to let them essentially walk with a spare key? Process that for a moment. This sounds so horrible until you open up the brain think a little bit and don't just keep your blinders on to what you're reading. You need to expand your thought process on this. And this is what I was doing with this. The code to get in. So essentially this is obviously like a newer sounding apartment that has some kind of key code to get in. If she got the code from him, if he gave it up, she could essentially at any point in time come back to that apartment and get in and do something. It's like giving a semi-random stranger a spare key to your place. So this doesn't nearly sound as bad against him as one might think. And this is where I want to dive into the brain of the people who are blindly supporting Zoe in this, which I really think should go down by the end of this video. But I'm sure a lot of people are here because they're not the biggest fans of Zoe, and that's fine. But if you happen to be watching this video and are a Zoe fan, process that the way that I did over here. That's not nearly as bad as it sounds, because would you want somebody you somewhat know running around with a spare key to your place that could come back at any time and get in and take stuff from it, or essentially squatter in there? Maybe you'd have to call the cops to get the person out in the future. That isn't really that surprising. The friend that I had that I visited cross country twice, once as boyfriend girlfriend, once as regular friend, I didn't have the spare key. I used her key when I was there. Since I was telecommuting for my job at the time, I didn't take that much vacation time from it other than when I was traveling. So I would work because I could work remotely, and she would work at her job. So I would drop her there, and then I would have her keys to the place so that I could get back in, and then I'd pick her up when work was done, and then I'd hand back over the keys. So, like, if there was a code involved over there, she'd have to go through the whole process of, like, okay, we're not boyfriend-girlfriend anymore. I should change the code to protect myself. So that's, yeah, think about that. So, about the sexual assault, he blamed me. He said he was jealous of me, and he wanted to be liked like that. He'd bring it up during sex where he'd be mean and violent, told me he loved me in a way that nobody else could because he could see that I was terrible and he loved me anyway. And I bought it because that's how you feel when you're recovering from being sexually assaulted. He told me that I was terrible. That just, because I caught Endgame recently over the Labor Day weekend, it makes me think of Drax telling Mantis, you are terrible. You are not attractive. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's not fair. It's just somewhat funnily, ironically timed, coincidentally timed. I spent a lot of that month hiding from him in the bathroom. His moods would shift, and he'd throw things and hurt himself. Seemingly at random, he jammed his fingers inside me, walked me around the house. When I told him it hurt, which sounds like he's just like, it's some weird puppet game going on there, or scared to leave, or scared to tell anyone. He'd act normal when other people were around and lay into me as soon as we were alone, then apologize and say how much he needed to love me. I got even more scared when 2 weeks had passed and he hadn't got me the plane ticket home. And then he eventually got home. She sent the breakup mail. He lashed out and banned me. And basically we're at the end of it. She said during Gamergate, I vague booked about it, and people were like, oh, I think I know who that is. It's probably Alec, right? And she said she hadn't gone to some GDCs because she was scared to see him, and people would clap and be happy and seeing about him, and I felt like a coward in the face of seeing Natalie's strength. So, I just wanted to say something too to protect other people. Okay. The sister posted that Alec had gone through some first of all, the sister had said that Alec had been abused in his life. Alec was probably knocked very off center from that abuse and didn't know how to handle a working relationship, and probably, from what I'm seeing here and from what I know of talking to people who have it, is probably bipolar. It looks like he committed bad acts when he was with Zoe. Not to the level of rape, like people had said, but definitely was up to something. And unfortunately, for some people who are not fans of her, I do believe something happened between the two of them. And if you're not a fan of Zoe, I think you have to open your brains a little bit and think that this sounds realistic. And it's an unfortunate thing, like, that things happen like this in life. Being a guy, we are usually the perpetrators of stuff like this, and it is painful to know that there are guys like this out there. It sucks. And it sucks to have... Sometimes it sucks to have the same gender as people who pull shit like this. I would say in Alex's case, he clearly was not a quote-unquote normal person. There was definite mental instability going on in this guy's brain, and likely highly chemical. It sounds like he had a damaged past and continued the cycle with somebody that he could do it on. And you may say, well, okay, in the first video you were like, Twitter, Facebook, this isn't reality. Why didn't this go to the police? Why didn't this go in front of law? Like, why wasn't a formal complaint made? Likely because she got out of the town where it happened and would have to go back to Winnipeg to get that done. And secondly, I don't know how much corroborating evidence there would be, especially when she was gone. It doesn't sound like she walked around bruised, or stairs are a learning tool, or I walked into the door, or beaten with soft objects that don't leave bruises but still hurt. It didn't sound like that. It sounds like heavy mental abuse with a twinge of physical. And she probably just figured, I can't go anywhere with this, because what really is going to be done? It's going to be more pain to reveal this and try to get something done about it than to just leave Winnipeg and just leave this moment of my life behind me. That was probably a bit of a mistake based on what we're going to talk about coming up, and it's going to lead to the second part of this, which is where Zoe begins to look way worse in this situation. But I want to come back to something that she says in the first paragraph. She says that the Toronto guy, the super bad one, got therapy, worked on himself, reached out and apologized, and she forgave him. So she actually... Now, granted, Alec may have never done that, but the sister made it sound like Alec was returned to his center line through exactly what she's saying the Toronto guy did, some therapy and things like that. So Alec had righted his ship a little bit. It makes me wonder if Zoe knew that or not, the way that she knew the Toronto guy, the rapist, the sexual assaulter, fixed himself. Because if she forgave the Toronto guy, which to me in my book looks like he did far worse to her than what Alec did, why did she not give Alec a pass and then go public with this accusation? If you forgave somebody and you know they're fixed and you're like, yeah, okay, you were a dick, but you obviously seem to be better now. Okay, we're done. You're essentially signing like an informal NDA between you and that person. It's like, say you were one of these Michael Jackson accusers. You were a kid and you're like, oh yeah, Michael Jackson diddled me and everything. And you settle out of court with Michael Jackson where he gives your parents $300,000 and essentially pays for your college. And you sign an NDA that says, we'll never talk of this again. Otherwise, the money's rescinded. There's your college, and there's like your life for the first couple of years when you get out of college with that money. You sign an agreement that says, I'm not going to talk about it. Well, when you apologize to somebody and they've forgiven you, you sort of have like a non-verbal NDA going on. And then if you turn on that person, you're kind of being a bastard about it. So if she is giving the original guy a pass for what I think is worse, why did she go after Alec so hard over here? Is it because Alec never did that apology? Or is it because Natalie spoke up about it and she's like, this is a chance for me to become relevant again. I'm going to say a similar thing to Natalie while this is a hot topic, and I'm going to be relevant again. And my supporters are going to come out and support me, and I'm going to have the adoration of all these people that are like, oh, I'm so sorry, and here's some money, which that's happening. There are people like, Zoe's having a bad day, I'm going to give to her Patreon. And she's made her Patreon private now. You can't see the income of it based on what I've heard. So it's kind of a ridiculous reaction right now to start flinging money at her, because keep watching, folks. After the commercial break, we'll be right back with some even more information over here. So before we dip into the new stuff, this article over here definitely talks about a lot of what was going on with her and is a bit neutral, but is going more on the we don't like her side. If, however, Quinn thinks this is insufficient, go to the cops about it. What's the purpose of her airing on Twitter these vague grievances? Well, for somebody who's been around the block for many, many years, and this was eye-opening in college and everything, I've known directly many women and ladies in my life that have had bad moments in their past, and some of them report it, and some of them don't. I have learned to stop my initial mental reflex of, well, why didn't you tell somebody who could get justice for you? The second or third time that I had heard this from somebody, especially somebody that I was dating and loved or cared about, I had to put that thought away, because I'm like, I've never been in that position. Similar to if somebody was telling me a story about an abortion. I've never been pregnant. I've never had to wonder about that. I've never gotten anybody pregnant. I've never had to be part of a decision on that. I can't put my brain in that situation and know that I would particularly do anything different. I had somebody that I knew in college that was very, very afraid of going to authorities about it. The parents didn't know, but friends knew. And the lasting effect of that relationship, it like knocked out horror movies for that person. It definitely changed that person's course of life. And we were at a state fair together, and we were walking down the midway after, it's just great normal night, and all of a sudden she started hustling me quicker and like really wanted to go around a few corners to a particular place, like, I don't know, to get cotton candy or something. But I was like, oh, I want to do some of these games. She's like, no, we got to go over there first. I want to go there. And she lied and said, no, this place closes like really early here. And she like got me through that midway super, super quick. And I didn't know why. And then later that night coming back, she said we were about 20 feet from that guy who did those very bad things to her in her past. And she was afraid of me seeing that guy and what I would do. She was afraid of him seeing her and recognizing her. This was a person who didn't report anything, and like they were traumatized by it. And then I know people who did. I personally am very proud of the people who did, because I feel it's right. But that's all I can share about it, because I don't want to go further with it. I'm not a lady. I haven't lived through those things. I can't pass judgment anymore. I just don't think it's fair, even if I do think the people who told cops and everything like that, like, I feel they did the right thing. But not everybody can do that. Some people feel there's just too much at stake. And perhaps she felt there was too much at stake here when it was happening, or didn't think there was a valid case here. I mean, this is mental abuse, blaming her for the assault that occurred back in Toronto. You can't, that doesn't hold up anywhere, and you can't prove that. You can't tell a cop, well, he blamed me for this. Like, what's the police gonna do over there? That's more on like your friends to get you out of that situation and everything. And we don't know if the violence was against her when he would be mean and violent during sex. We don't know the context here, so this is not easy to open cases about. And I should have paid a little bit more attention to this post when I did the first video. However, I was blocked under Twitter, so it's not like I could go back to it. So I think that answers that question over here. But the airing on Twitter, if you forgave a rapist, why are you putting on blast somebody who did something, I would say, technically less offensive and everything like that? But Aaron Gonji, her ex-boyfriend who started the whole Gamergate thing with his blog post and the Zoe 5 guys, continues to prove that he is an absolute national treasure. And we should build a fence around Aaron and protect this man for the rest of his life, because it goes to show what happens when reality and the truth is out there. So this is a Facebook conversation between Aaron and Zoe at some point in the past, and Aaron has released a video recently saying, this is true, this exists, this isn't doctored, this is her and I will prove it, and he proves it in the video. So they start off by talking about the current situation, and this is probably post Zoe abuse on him at this point. Some abuse has probably occurred, because he says your current situation is that you're consistently discarding your own principles to serve your career. This is like the tagline of the movie, like Jaws 4, this time it's super uber personal. This would be the tagline of the Zoe movie. You're discarding your principles to serve your career. And then she says, and to betray the man you ostensibly loved, probably himself, and disregard the extent to which you caused him suffering. Again, probably himself. If they're talking about some other guy, it still applies to him, because we know that from the Zoe post, which started Gamergate. So, I think I started to want to take it back and not have just been pushed around and not have let him taken it from me. Who? Blank and later Blank Part 2. Blank is probably Toronto guy, and later Blank Part 2 is probably Alec. Like, I'm really thinking, and I kind of hate admitting this, I think I set out for vengeance. I remember considering giving up and quitting games, but part of continuing was going to bury them. And everyone told me I couldn't do what I want, that I'd lose the game if I came out and said anything about what happened. And it sucked, because like, I was so deeply involved with the community then that I did believe it. It was sold to me so differently, as this was a meritocracy with no politics. And then it all crashed down around me, and the actual system was laid bare, and it fucked me up. How long did it take you to catch on? Until they turned on me. And they were the first people I interacted with since moving to Canada, and first people to accept me at all. Like, other than my husband, who had largely been checked out, they brought me in, they gave me the Kool-Aid, and sold it so well. Toronto, bad guy, rapist town, is 1,000 times worse than any other scene, and 1,000 times better pretending it isn't. Most of my work was with new people, and they stood up for me when, I don't know what this could be here. So I thought they were right. I was working my face off for the community, volunteering and everything, starting games, making games, helping everyone. Like, I found my thing, so my vision was colored heavily. I remember how happy I was, and then this is awful. I think they only supported me when Blank did what he did, because Blank saw and had power. But then it was a guy with more power than me that came after me. Which one is Blank? The guy from Blank, my Blank. before the shit with blank too. So he could be referencing Alex at this point. Alec at this point. I was completely unguarded, overenthusiastic puppy. I was so happy to be around these people, so I was dumb just to be surrounded by people making awesome things. And no, I wanted to get high up so I could tear it down, decentralize and destabilize everything. I wanted to make sure no one had that kind of power again. Kind of like money laundering. And Aaron says, "Well, it'll never be torn down that way. You're just deciding who the new people in power are." No, it's not like that. So she's saying "Viva la Revolution" over here. Um, she states that at some point, whenever this 717 was, we don't know if this is this year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, at some point, she had it in her head to wreak vengeance and get revenge for what happened to her and what the beginning days of her being in the gaming community, the game creation community, were like. So this really, really colors her revelation last week. When you see her talking about and verified and truthfully, this isn't doctored messages, when you see her saying that she wanted to tear the system down in an act of vengeance, it may seem like it has finally come to its fruition, and it kind of changes what she did after Natalie. There was a way, if you're a Zoe supporter, there's a way of thinking of like, well, I believe what she said. Natalie came out and she's like, well, if Natalie can do it, I can do it too. It's solidarity. It's solidarity to me because similar to the Me Too movement in Hollywood, I'm coming out and saying, yes, this kind of bad shit occurs. And that's solidarity to me because somebody's gone before me. And then it's also a circuitous solidarity with Natalie by saying, I got your back. It's happened to me too. I'm going to talk about it too. You're not alone, and you're not an isolated case. It seems that way, and that's all the puppies and rainbows about it. But now there's a way of looking at this like, aha, this is finally my moment to get revenge on the guy who took advantage of me in a vulnerable state and messed me up for a little while. Well, now Alec is dead, so this vengeance that she could have been seeking may have gone too far. And it's a really sad thing to think that the sister said his ship was righted, he was on the good path again, his darkness was gone, and then this comes around. This, to his darkness, is like waving heroin in front of a former addict. You take a former heroin addict who's clean for 3 months and you wave a needle in front of them and you just dance it along their skin and just kind of etch it on their skin a little bit and be like, come on, just like old times. You know the feeling and everything like that. To have come out of whatever darkness Alec was in and then to see something like Zoe's Twitter post, if there was a bigger kick in the ass to go back to that darkness in the world, I don't know what it is. It is waving a cigarette in front of somebody who quit. It is waving a crack rock in front of somebody who has quit. There's a dollar bill in a mirror in front of you, and you haven't done coke since the 80s when you were a Wall Street broker. I mean, this is waving the addiction again in the face of an addict. And perhaps that is exactly why Zoe Quinn's Twitter has gone dark and nobody's heard from her. She might actually be sitting there thinking, oh, fuck. Like, in my quest for vengeance and revenge over here, I have now caused the life of somebody. And let's be truthful about this. The very last moment on this earth for Alec, that decision was his. And whether you're for him or against him or for Zoe or against him, that's something we all should be able to agree on, that when Alex left when Alec left this world, it was ultimately his decision. However, the environment around him very clearly was at least 90-95% what she did and the dominoes it started. And we don't know if anybody had his back, if anybody was in his corner trying to help him out, like, you could recover from this, like, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll get out in front of it. Like, we don't know if he had somebody spinning this to him, because visibly, publicly, it looked like nobody was. The devs were turning on him, the public was turning on him. He may have been seeing that rapist word out there uh, being thrown at him, and he's like, how do you come back from that? Um, and that probably, through therapy, through medication, just kicked him right back into that darkness. And it probably closed the box in on him. And this post right here between her and Aaron, and the whole forgiving the Toronto guy, just kind of makes her situation with her Twitter post against Alex seem that much more monstrous. Because it's like, you forgave a guy who did something actually very illegal in the case of the law and police and everything, and you could have probably brought charges against him. You forgave a person who did that, but yet, how many years have gone by between you and Alec that nothing has happened about it, was never talked about, and then you drop this bombshell in the middle of nowhere, and now he is no longer here. He's no longer with us. Like, that goes back to what I said in the first video. She dropped a nuke behind her and turned around and walked away. And she didn't have to go back. She didn't have to answer questions. She probably never was going to. She was probably never going to interact with anybody who was asking her legitimately non-trolly questions about the whole situation. And, now her Twitter's deactivated. And now she's probably suffering a way deeper ramification from her post than ever before. And my guess is if she has any kind of a soul, which, based on her treatment of Aaron over here, I don't really know that she does. She's probably heavily rethinking that post and maybe wanting to take it back. I think I recall before the Twitter went dark that there maybe was a post that she wasn't sorry for it or something like that, but this sets a lot of things back. Do I believe he did something to her? Yeah, absolutely. I truly do. My freshman year, I helped save a friend of mine. So my dorm was co-ed, and each floor was a sex, and it was a 3-unit dorm. So my unit was guy girl, and you tended to be very good friends with the people in your unit. So I knew the guys' floor below me pretty well. I knew the girls' floor above me pretty well, and I was hanging out in a room below me one winter my freshman year, and something very, very bad was about to go down with a girl that I knew from the girls' floor. 2 outsiders were basically going to pull a train on her because she was inebriated, and I did everything I could to get her out of the situation, and she wasn't making it very easy for the beginning part of it. Suffice to say, at the end of it, I woke up my resident advisor in the middle of the night, who went down and pounded on that door in his boxers and a t-shirt and told the off-campus guys to leave. And she finally had realized just exactly what I was doing, because I tried like 3 or 4 things before I got my RA involved, and she kept doing actions that were preventing the help we were trying to give her over there. We were trying very, very hard to get her out of that room because it was going to be bad. And finally, when my RA got her out of there and she kind of got wind of exactly what was going to happen, she cried. And the next day, I kind of discovered that at least for several weeks afterwards, I had turned into a mini hero on the girls' floor even though I didn't intend for anything like that to happen, and it was sort of quiet. It was in whispers and everything like that. But I found out about it afterwards, and I was like, I don't deserve any praise for this. I was helping a friend not get seriously hurt. Uh, but I sort of had this like mini hero status on that floor for a while afterwards, and I've witnessed the darkness out there. I've heard it from friends and girlfriends. I saved somebody from having a story like this, and I tried extremely hard to do it. There were several things along the way where could have been like, well, if she wants to stay in there, I guess I got to give up and let her do it. But I knew what the two of them were talking about, and I knew what was going to happen to her, and it didn't sound good. So these things are definitely out there, and I do have to revise my first video and say that something definitely occurred between the two of them, and it was probably something that couldn't necessarily be proven in a court of law or could have gone anywhere with the police. And if she had already gone back to Toronto, she probably wanted to bury it and shovel dirt over it and not have to deal with it again. Well, she dug it up in seemingly what could be a moment of convenience. If this was any other person out there in this world, I would say she was just probably showing Natalie's solidarity in what Natalie was going through and what was revealed, sort of like the Me Too in Hollywood, sort of like what was going on with Epstein and everything like that. However, she has constantly proven to have motives out there. It doesn't change the fact that she has grifted money on the Kickstarter. It doesn't change the fact that she thoroughly abused Aaron's love for her and Aaron's boyfriend status and cheated on him multiple times and mentally abused him in a way that she had been abused in her past. So she's not a cycle breaker over here. And if you take the original Gamergate starting Zoe post into consideration, Aaron seemed like a pretty decent guy, and it was just constantly coming back to get swatted in the nose again with the newspaper. And if you were somebody who did not support him when this happened, if you were like, oh, this is just a bitter ex doing this kind of revenge thing and everything like that, if you do not tag Zoe for this in a similar light, then you were being ridiculously hypocritical. If and like to that end, here C4 Cipher, would somebody please tell me what the difference is between what Aaron had happened to him from Zoe and what Alec did to Zoe aside from the gender swap? Imagine if it was Aaron accusing Zoe of abuse. There has been a guy who has accused Zoe of sexual abuse out there, the guy whose crotch was grabbed. Reminder that Zoe has claimed to have stabbed somebody. Reminder that Zoe has claimed, and this one is proven, but this is her words, that she potentially broke a man's orbital socket at a strip club. So remember when Aaron painted a target on Zoe's back, but now Zoe bears no responsibility for what happened to Holowka. So Aaron was responsible for what happened to Zoe, but Zoe is not to be held responsible for Holowka. This is hypocritical right there. And this is when you get into that sycophantic, blind following that it happens out there. And this believe the victim BS when Aaron made accusations against Quinn. Did you auto-believe him? Or is it less believe the victim and more believe the person that you want to believe? So these tweets reveal the culture of this. And it needs to be thought of more openly. It is a sad thing that a person has lost their life in this. It is a sad thing that it's a person who may have been redeemed from a bad time in their past. If you don't believe a person can be redeemed, then again, I point to the first page of her post where she said a rapist was redeemed in her own eyes. So you need to apply that to Alec. Maybe he never made right by Zoe. Maybe he never contacted her and apologized the way the Toronto guy did. The sister seemed to imply that he was as redeemed as Zoe claims the Toronto guy is. So knowing that the person was on a better path and likely not repeating patterns and doing the same thing over again, you could say in a lot of ways an innocent life was lost in this. Maybe not a formerly innocent life, but probably a current innocent life was lost in this. And that is really sad, and that is what it's like to be the victim of a hate mob online, to have a figurehead throw active people at you as if they are spears and torches, and to wake up one morning and look out your castle and the village is there trying to burn it down. And this is the unfortunate power of people in her situation. It is the unfortunate power of people in her situation that is always believed to be in the right or have the moral high ground on a situation. Oh, she's this. She belongs to this, which is protected and should never be, criticized. You can't be critical of that because they exist in a plane that you're not allowed to touch. Yeah, well, touch this plane right here because this is bad. And while things have changed to the point where maybe it is very more believable that Alec did something in the past, what she actually did now seems worse. So more people should come around into believing something did happen between the two of them that wasn't good. That should happen. But what she did now carries way more weight than it did in the first couple days when you take into account several of the factors that I brought up here. And she is ridiculously as guilty as him now at this point. It's just a different final action from it. So let me know what you think below. I know this one is kind of long again, but it is a extremely serious topic for many, many reasons, be it suicide, be it the power of online moms, be it the darker side of gaming, entertainment, Hollywood, indie games, regular game development, however you want to put it. This is a deep conversation that needs to be had. And in modern America, where everybody is so split politically and people don't want to cross lines to go to another side simply because, oh, well, I'm on this side of the fence, so I always have to do it. Like, one of my viewers had commented on the Blasey Ford accusation against Kavanaugh. That's a case where I do believe the person who made the accusation. I do believe Ford. A lot of what she said resonates with me, similar to what I have heard from people in my life. And her detailed remembrance, the things she does remember and doesn't remember, make sense to me. I had somebody post a picture of me on Facebook a couple of years back that just came up recently of me at a party in college with my friend Eric, who is my guitar mentor, and we're wearing these like goofy troubadour hats, and he's got his guitar and I can see I have mine. I don't know what party that was. Somebody took it on the stairs and we were like out the front door, and I don't remember the layout of the place. It doesn't seem like a place that I went to commonly, but yet I remember the stupid troubadour hats. It's like us being goofy, like, oh, we're going to go to this party, we're going to play guitars, we're like the traveling entertainment, and then we're going to leave. There are certain things that I very much remember about it, but I don't know whose place it was, what party it was. People kind of had to be like, well, I think it was so-and-so's place. And then much recently, as I was planning this video, I was like, oh, maybe that was Nancy's place. That was a 2-level place that had stairs. But like, I know it was not the place that I really spent a lot of my senior year going to, because that was a 1-level one. So it makes me think of like what she remembered is what made sense and what was critical to the issue, and what she didn't remember is stuff you wouldn't commit to memory that day anyway. If it started off as a normal day and you were like, la la la, Smurf music or whatever, you probably aren't going to exactly remember where you went and what you were wearing. But then the moment bad shit started happening, that's when you remember like what the bathroom looked like, or the floor looked like, or the stairs, or the door that you slammed shut, and what kind of lock was on it when you slammed it to get away. Those were the details she did remember. It's the, this is a normal day stuff, why would I commit it to memory things that she didn't remember? So like her case makes sense to me. Originally Zoe's didn't, because it's who Zoe was. Now I've swung a little bit the other way and believed, yeah, something happened between the two of them and it wasn't good, but it definitely set her teeth into vengeance. She bit into that vengeance apple with that Twitter post, and she now has a lot to reap from this. This is some bad shit that's going to be with this girl for a long time now. I hope your quest for vengeance was worth it, Zoe. Truly do. It's Napalm signing off. Let me know what you guys think below, and thanks for sticking with me for this long of a video. Peace out, everybody.